All right, Brian.
Sam, sir, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. So, Sam, I think I'm doing the introduction tonight. It's Monday, it's 6 o'clock. That means you and me are here from the offices of Shihab Burke in Dublin, Ohio, to talk about an immigration issue relevant to our community here, which typically focuses on employment immigration. But honestly, with the way the news is today, I think it's going to be hard to not touch upon non-employment issues as well. But without further ado, I am Brian Burke. I'm that Burke of Shihab Burke, and with me is
Sam Shihab.
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk about the election, the results, obviously, and the impact on U.S. immigration law. Big week.
A little bit.
Yeah, not what the polls told us. Well, I think the polls were trending in his favor.
Yeah.
But talking about it and actually being here today is a completely different feel.
Well, you and I talked probably right on Monday afternoon before the election, and the answer was, I don't know. We'll see. And we saw, and new president. Well, we're going to have a new president regardless, but our new president's an old president, a former president, Donald Trump. And that's something that's only ever happened, I think, maybe once before, having a former president be the next president. Interesting times.
Interesting time, yes. And to kind of put things in perspective, we also have a Congress that seems to be going towards the Republican Party, and therefore we may end up with an incredibly unique scenario for at least 2 years until the next congressional election, where both chambers of Congress, potentially, because the House is not finalized yet, but it's trending Republican, and both chambers of Congress and the President of the United States from the same party.
Yeah.
And that's
the Supreme Court, which has been halfway, nominated by Donald Trump himself as well. So yeah, all three branches.
So we have right-leaning president from the Republican Party, right-leaning Congress that is predominantly Republican, and we have a Supreme Court that is a conservative Supreme Court right now. And the number one issue the president ran on, President Trump ran on, is
immigration.
Immigration.
Yeah.
And therefore, we will for sure see changes in the immigration spectrum in the United States.
Yep.
There's no question about that. I think we can all agree on that.
I want to meet the person who says, no, I don't see it.
Yes.
Crazy person.
Yes.
Yeah.
So with that, the question I have is, of you, Brian, what is the changes that we are to expect? And I think to kind of simplify this, we have the undocumented. Mm-hmm. And today probably is a conversation about all fronts.
Yeah, I think so.
We have the undocumented, we have the family immigration, we have the employment immigration.
Yeah. Yeah.
And probably we also have
refugee
asylee, which is kind of in the same group.
Kind of in the same group as undocumented in some ways, but also pure illegal type of immigration, that's for sure.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk about the undocumented for a second and look at what he's planning on doing. If you can give us a quick rundown, and then maybe we can flush that one out and get it out of the way first.
Yeah, I mean, the undocumented is, mass deportation is what comes to mind first. It's, reasonable minds differ as to how many people are unlawfully present in the United States, but his plan is to remove them all without discretion. And let's talk about discretion for a minute here. Basically, discretion means, use your best judgment to determine which order to remove people. And as long as I've been doing my job, policy has been, you find the bad people and you remove them and you spend your efforts on them because you have limited resources. And
so he's going after the low-hanging fruits first. He said the number one priority for him is anybody who has an order of deportation. Sure. Which is they approximate that to be 1.5 million people who had an order of deportation, and he wants to go after these people, and he wants to get them out of the country immediately because there's no court hearing. Yeah. It's just a matter of arresting them and moving them out of this country, obviously at a great expense.
Yeah. So I was, in terms of, even though I'm an immigration lawyer, I like immigration. I don't like the idea of removing people from the country. It's what we sort of fight against. But I was reading sort of some statistics regarding what it thought it cost. I was reading something from the American Immigration Council, which is trustworthy source, and they said their estimation, I think it was like $800 some odd billion to deport everybody who's unlawfully present outside the United States over the course of 10 years, I think it was. And
well, this is like 10 million.
well, yeah.
But these numbers are fantastic. I mean, nobody's going to think that Trump is going to deport 10 million people. I mean, let's be realistic.
Okay, he only has 4 years left of presidency, and it's an impossibility. I mean, that's true.
He's not going to go after 10 million people. He cannot go after the economy will shut down. I mean, you got industries in California that's significantly undocumented in the vegetables and the
I know.
fruit.
Believe me, I've been on that side of the conversation before as well. Yeah.
He's going to go after people who had orders of deportation against them.
Yeah.
About 1 million to 1.5 million first. He is going to go out and get them. And he is going to go after people with criminal background.
Going out to get them is a massive.
Yes. Well, that's the question, and it's
and then we're going to climb over the mountain, and then they're gone.
The question is how he's going to do that.
I'm stuck on that as well.
Yeah.
It's an intelligence challenge. It's a people challenge. It's a logistics challenge. Just to remove 1.5 million people from the United States is a massive undertaking. That is.
The problem is if he coerces local law enforcement to be involved in this process, which he has to do to be successful, is going to be a big problem for every community because people don't report crimes. People are now scared of the police.
Yeah.
The relationship between the police and the community will change, right?
Yeah.
So that is a big concern about how it's going to be done. So it's a big challenge. We're going to sit down and watch this. Our office, we do not represent people in general who are in that group of people.
Yeah.
That's not what we do. But it's clearly a big challenge for this administration to carry out this very massive undertaking.
Yeah.
So we don't know how that's going to happen, but we're going to sit back and watch this because it's going to be costly, like you said. It's going to be difficult, and it's going to be hopefully done in a correct way because I think his hope is a lot of people will self-deport.
Yeah.
He is going to be.
It's also, I also imagine it'll be a deterrent as well. If deportation is up, why might I come in the first place too?
And obviously, building the fence.
Yeah.
Building the fence is going to be a big deal for him. I guess
So we're talking about. Well, I want to say because I want to talk about time frames as well because the number one questions I've been getting asked in the last week or so is when. Brian, when? And we're talking about day one things right now, where day one he's going to say probably executive order, no more discretion on deportation. Here's what go after. Focus on these things first, but there's no discretionary factors.
He's going to run out of money in no time, like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, the resource is going to be now that can encourage. I mean, they have to look for money somewhere.
Yeah.
They have to find money. With allowing people to file adjustment of status in the employment immigration. Could be where it's going to be because he needs a lot of money, and there is 400,000 people who can hand you a lot of money to get their adjustment status from the employment immigration and get that money.
Yeah. Well, I'll take it one step further, Sam. I think my answer is that is no, they won't. I don't think they'll be allowing people to file adjustment of status. But right now on so many forms, there's an asylum program fee. Asylum program fee to take care of for asylum matters.
Do you think it's going to be 10 times the cost?
No, I think that fee will go away because they're going to be trying to shut down asylum, and I think it could very well be replaced with a deportation program fee.
But $400 is not enough.
Yeah.
That money is not enough.
Well, agreed. Massive challenge. So day one, we expect to see orders.
Here's the good news.
Yeah.
Here's the good news. It doesn't affect the people listening to us.
Legal.
It doesn't affect a lot of people out there. Yeah. And there's not much we can really speculate except sit back and watch because the task, the promise and the task is so huge.
Yeah.
and it may practically suck all the time and resources because every president has limited political output, energy, limited resources, limited.
You have an entire branch of government, but it can only go so much, and he has to spend political capital on this program, and So I've been sort of thinking about this topic, talking tonight about order, what happens and when, and these are day one things for me. These are signature things, executive orders. You're probably going to get a change in policy on deportation. One thing that because we're talking just probably about 20 minutes before this presentation, it is silly to think that he's not going to go back to the things that his administration was doing previously, right?
Right, that's a good point. I don't want to brush over that.
Yeah.
I just want to pause for a second. And what we were talking about is don't expect Trump to turn 180 degree on things that was done before, and now all of a sudden he's doing something completely opposite. Now he could maybe one or two things, very small, but there's not going to be a shift in direction and attitude. It's going to be, ultimately Stephen Miller, the architect of the prior immigration restrictions, he has been with the president all along. They've been drafting administrative actions for the last few months, and they're ready to run full speed, right? So don't expect change. It's going to be more of the same thing for the most part. That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, for sure, So day one, definitely something on deportation, right? One of the things that I was, again, another executive order was the subject of the travel ban that came up as part of his first administration, this quote-unquote so-called, Muslim ban that eventually turned into sort of, a terrorism-related ban, touching places on like Iran, North Korea, etc. That's the sort of thing that could come back early on as well, which again, that's kind of that. That's the sort of thing that is, that's a policy he can lay down. He tried it last time, and it stuck, as I recall, during the course of his administration. The terrorism, if you're coming from a place where we think terrorists or bad people come from, we're going to tamp down,
restrict travel to the United States. Yes.
Something he can do day one. So those are the sort of things that maybe we're thinking about were most important to our audience out there. One is the deportation is out there. Right.
So
that travel ban is.
So as we're making these predictions, we don't know.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure everybody is clear. We don't know. Nobody knows. We will find out together.
Yeah.
In the coming.
We'll have plenty to talk about
in the coming months.
Yeah.
So we have between today and January 20th. Nothing is going to change.
That's a very, very good point. I've been got an email in the last 20 minutes saying, Brian, is Trump laws going to change my immigration application? The answer is he's not even the president yet, my friend.
Yeah, he is going out. I got an email today from someone that says, I'm really worried. My husband is a naturalized U.S. citizen. He has no criminal background, but I'm really worried. Is he okay? Yeah. Well, he had gone after naturalized U.S. citizen to denaturalize him last time with limited success.
Yeah, a bunch of, as I recall, the headlines were basically a bunch of money wasted with little results.
Yeah. It is not unlikely that he is going to pursue that one more time. For those who may have lied at their naturalization application, or people who, trying to catch bad guys, which is possible, he'll do that one more time.
Yeah. Well, again, though, you as soon as you say that, I'd say, well, I mentioned that program was expensive; it didn't have much, but again, you start running out of political capital and you start running out of money to fund these things. So day one, president from the very top starts making executive orders, and those are fundamental, just policy changes. But sooner or later, he is already right now. I'm seeing them in the headlines. Making new appointees. They announced he's going to be his border czar. You're hearing, who his chief of staff is going to be, all the people he's going to choose to be in leadership roles. And fundamentally, those people, they're going to eventually get assigned their agency, get assigned their job, and they're going to, start enacting his vision. Basically telling, telling the people, the non-political employees, the regular day-to-day workers of an agency, like USCIS, for example, what to do. And, that's when we can start seeing changes. Basically, even if the regulations change and the state policy guidance doesn't change, the way people can decide cases can change in a way that probably won't get them, sued. Basically being maybe issuing a little bit more RFEs and just.
There's no question.
Yeah.
What you're saying is there's going to be a trickle down attitude. I've seen it many times throughout many presidents in the past, where there is I saw it with George W. Obama. I saw it with Obama when Obama talked about respecting people, talking about respecting Americans, respecting each other, being, kind to each other, and being tolerant.
Yeah.
You saw the organization at all levels carrying out this attitude. When after 9/11, when there's zero tolerance against immigrants, I've seen that at every level.
Yeah.
You don't need a mandate, you don't need a policy change, you don't need.
It's a corporate culture comes from the top sort of thing, and sooner or later, this person gets moved into their office at the top of the agency, on the top floor. They're going to say, well, it's time to get to work. All hands meeting, policy memorandums that here's what I want to see from you guys.
We've talked enough about employment immigration. Undocumented.
Yeah.
I want to talk a moment about family immigration.
Yeah.
And then maybe move on to employment, and then talk about how. After that, I'll talk about how these changes will come about. But let's talk about family immigration for a second. What to expect?
More processing time, that's for sure. The number one problem with family immigration during the prior Trump administration was the Department of State was absolutely starved for employees. They put on, as I recall, it's been a while, I try to block it out, hiring freezes, and basically that's it. They were gutting at the Department of State and not replacing people. And if that happens again, they'll have less people to do interviews. Less people to do interviews. That's enough for family immigration, because much family immigration comes from the consulate directly. Mom and dad, husbands and wives, kids, brothers and sisters.
What about changes in the law? We're going to talk later about how these changes will happen. But are they going to? Do you think they're going to eliminate some of that? They're going to reduce the number. I think we have 250,000 a year, or eliminate certain family-based categories.
Okay, so we're talking about immigration sponsored by U.S. citizens and permanent residents.
Yeah, family immigration.
Yeah. Okay. So, spouses and children, I think we can agree, will probably stay. One thing, in the past, parents and siblings have been on the theoretical chopping block. I was just reading before we went live here a Washington Post article saying, oh yeah, back in 2017 they had a proposal ready to get rid of parents and siblings for U.S. citizens, which is it would be quite a change.
So fourth preference category gone.
Yeah.
And then parents, which are immediate relative now.
Yeah.
But could be, immediate relative U.S. citizen. So they're trying to get rid of that. So that's a possibility that they want.
And I hadn't even.
What was the name he used? Chain migration.
Chain migration.
Chain migration. So obviously, chain migration is a negative description of family immigration.
Yeah.
Because chain migration cannot give it a negative connotation.
Oh yeah. I think that the theory is that you come here illegally, you have kids. Those kids are U.S. citizens, and then they start sponsoring everybody after they reach the age of 21, when they can sponsor people.
So if somebody filed for a brother 10 years ago, the wait time is 15 years now.
Yeah. That brother's still
Do they
not here.
cancel that and give your money back?
No, they don't.
Because there are no visas available. What's going to happen? We don't know. I don't know the answer.
I don't think that. Sam, it sounds like a great lawsuit for an enterprising attorney where.
Because the government is not going to give refunds for these people.
Sam, just keep this between us, because I want to be one of the attorneys on that big class action lawsuit. I've always wanted a great big financial settlement from the government.
There's no class action lawsuit against the government.
Okay.
Maybe there is. I don't think I don't think there's class action. But be that as it may.
Yeah.
Be that as it may. So a big question: what happened to 10, 15 years? There's 2 million. I don't know what the number is.
Oh yeah,
the number of people waiting in line for so long is massive. If they say, but here's
we're just killing that program, and all your petitions are garbage. I think it's unlikely that they do that.
They're not going to do that. But here's what's going to happen: they probably will take the available number to 10% of that number.
Turn down the visa availability. So yeah, now your brother's going to be even older and grayer before he can
it'll be
come.
at 225 years before the brother or sister of a U.S. citizen come to the United States.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something they're going to do. All right. So
Hey,
clearly limiting family immigration. Now we are at an age of both chambers of Congress and the president are from the same party.
Yep.
So these are real scenarios we're talking about. These are not BS hypothetical, but we're going to talk about Congress later in a minute.
Yeah, because we got to get through regulatory changes and big law changes too.
It's kind of a big picture now.
Yeah.
Moving on to big picture here for people. Big picture employment, immigration, Brian.
Okay.
Where do you see the most of? I'm gonna call it the damage. I'm gonna call it the damage.
Yeah.
Most of the damage that's going to be caused.
Well,
H-1B, yes.
yeah, stricter standards, more RFEs, more noise, more noirs, more investigation.
Elon Musk, Stephen Miller.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, okay, he's the newfound boy of the Republican Party. Everybody loves him. You know, he came in on an H-1B visa. There was a report from the Washington Post that he worked illegally when he was a student. Very detailed. About a few weeks ago.
Yeah, he was working for a startup and he wasn't allowed to do
did
so.
not have a work authorization. Yeah. His statement says that he was allowed to work. Washington Post said he was not.
There was no program that allows for that, essentially.
Yeah. So who knows? Yeah. Then you get Stephen Miller, who is going to who wants to kill everything. You want to destroy every potential opportunity for H-1B visas.
Yeah.
Is there a tension, or are they both on the same page?
I don't think, let's talk briefly about what the policies were last time on H-1B visas. Yeah. Raise the salary sky high.
Yes. Higher rate of denial.
Higher rate of denials, higher rate of RFEs. The contracts and itineraries memo that says, oh yeah, we're going to allow you to work, do your consulting job off-site if you can provide a contract that or statement of work that states the duration, resulting in fun things like 1 day retroactive approval notices.
Short duration of approval. Now a lot of that stuff was flushed out in the lawsuit that ITServe did, but they could come back by a regulatory change, so they can pass legislation or regulations to bring those back legally.
Yeah.
Because before it was found that it was not legal, now they can come back and pass laws to probably bring it back.
Laws. Yeah. So let's talk about regulations then, Sam. So we talked about, day one, you're going to get executive orders, policy proclamations from the president that say, here's what you guys should do.
Before we go there, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
You're fine.
What other things in employment? Then we'll talk about regulations.
Okay.
H-4EAD.
H-4EAD, they're going to be coming after that. But, everything I say here, Sam, H-4EAD, Donald Trump's first term, they had control of both houses. I'm pretty sure they had control of both houses, and they didn't do that. They could have changed the law then, because they thought they were going to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. What Donald, repeal and replace that? They couldn't do that one.
Huge difference.
Huge difference
between Donald Trump first term and Donald Trump second term.
Okay.
You have somebody who absolutely had no idea how to govern, had absolutely no experience.
Yep.
Now you have somebody with preparation and knowledge. So the inability to carry out or execute properly, I will take that off the table.
I have an alternative take for you on that one. Any sort of career civil servant, I'm sounding angry, but any sort of career civil servant that may have helped him last time, he has alienated those people, and the people who have experience running the government, many of them don't want anything to do with him. He is bringing in,
Brian.
Yeah.
He won the 313 electoral votes, I believe.
Yep.
And the majority.
Yeah.
Okay. He has a mandate. This is a different one than the one that surprised everybody.
Yep.
That lost the popular vote and barely carried the electoral vote. This is someone who convincingly won the election.
I will say this.
You're trying to kind of spin it.
I'm not trying to spin it. Governing is dirty work. Sam, travel back in time about a year and a half. The Republicans they couldn't elect a Speaker of the House. What was it, 30 days? They went around that. They are a united party as they are in glee over their legislative and presidential victories. But there are cracks amongst them that can make them fall apart.
Okay, I love your optimism.
I love how we're both just talking with absolute certainty, like the other guy's an idiot.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not talking as you're an idiot.
Well, I'm not talking as you're talking as you're an idiot. We're just definitely talking as absolutely. No, you fool! I have it entirely right. Yeah.
H4E80.
Yeah.
Possibly he's going to go after.
I think that's the sort of thing that can run through the news cycle, and frankly, most of the American populace won't care about it, and meaning it can get done.
Yeah. What does he have against it? Who's going to make? Why does he care?
What's the number you've seen? What numbers have you seen quoted as to how many people have that? Like 500,000?
H4E80?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think that's the number I've seen somebody in the audience. Speaking of, get your questions in because we're gonna
If you can put that screen down here, Brian, otherwise my neck will hurt.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll get it zoomed in. We'll get to the questions in a minute. But the H4EAD, I think they estimate like 500,000 people have that. And let's say if you are saying immigrants are screwing with the job market, right? How about I knock about, administratively about 500,000 people out, 500,000 immigrants out of the job market? Sounds like a great idea, I
just don't understand it. I don't understand the logic of going after it. Who is he making happy?
That's one. I will admit that I
don't get it.
Here's what I'll tell you why we don't get it. We're a bunch of immigration attorneys, and we are sort of pro-immigration people, and we have trouble wrapping our head around
exactly.
That. Yeah.
So, okay, H4EAD, H1B. What about H1B? Definitely restriction, L visa restriction, Muslim ban. We talked about that. Doesn't matter whether you have H1B or it may not matter whether you have a green card or not.
Yeah.
And then what else, Brian? What else do you expect? Changes
in employment, going by what we saw in employment last time, that's where
What about green card for everybody who has an associate degree or higher?
Is that what they're saying? Associate's degree or higher in the United States?
Mm-hmm.
No,
it's not possible.
I always love to make a joke, right? I imagine them passing that program, right? And then they find one guy. They find one guy who they're giving a student visa to. He's going to get that green card through U.S. education, and not going to give out any other. I imagine that if any sort of massive change to the student visa program, where everybody gets a green card in the end, also turns into a massively changed student visa program where there ain't that many students, which would absolutely infuriate the colleges and universities that love your international student dollars.
Talk about students. Changes to students. Potentially OPT.
That's something I've been read as being potentially on the chopping block. My favorite one that terrifies me as an attorney, it's the one that, so we give you that D/S I-94. Under present policy, you're not out of status until either USCIS or the Board of Immigration Appeals, which is an immigration court, tells you. Their policy they put out, which got killed or put off, was, it turns out as soon as you violate your status, you start accruing unlawful presence in the United States, but you won't know until we tell you, X amount of years later that you actually started accruing lawful presence. Terrifying, hard to keep track of.
Unlawful presence is when someone the clocks start counting once they accrue 180 days of unlawful presence. They're not allowed to enter the United States for 3 years, or they accrued 1 year of unlawful presence. They are not allowed to come back for 10 years. And to accrue unlawful presence is a very defined term. It's not about violating your status only, but also about knowing or receiving notice from the government that you've now accruing unlawful presence.
You've gone beyond your
It's a complicated term. We don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's very restrictive for students.
Punishing people who don't get great immigration advice. Students,
What else, Brian? RFEs, more RFEs, more H-1B denials, slower processing. Right?
Slower processing times are going to be on the table.
That's the H-1B denial was fourfold of the prior administration. Went up to 21%.
About 25%, I think it was. But
25% denials. We can see that again now, right? Nothing. So what about legal immigration? What about those people waiting for the green card for years and years? Any potential impact on these people?
Well, if you monkey around with family immigration, and suddenly they're not giving out green cards that way any further, those family-based green cards could overflow into employment.
Is it possible he's going to move that in the positive direction?
What do you mean move?
I mean, move the backlog, move some of the 250,000 green cards to the employment.
It doesn't seem very likely.
Trying looking for something
likely to
positive.
me.
Is there anything positive we expect from him on immigration, Brian?
I don't know. They're saying that change is good.
Yeah, we don't know, right? We don't think so. We don't know. I mean, he has to see maybe. I mean, he did say, I'm not against legal immigration. I'm only against illegal immigration, but that doesn't say anything.
Yeah. Well, I want to get, before we move on to taking the good questions of the audience out there, I want to just talk about a little bit more about timeframes. So we talked about
time frames and also, Brian, how the law can change. I think explain it to people.
Yeah.
But timeline, yes.
So,
nothing before January 20th.
Yeah, January 20th, you get, on Inauguration Day, literally, you're going to get, or maybe the day after, you're going to get a bunch of executive orders on anything he wants, and immigration is going to be high amongst them, and that's where you're going to get, deportation, you can maybe get a new travel ban, something like that. Then, policy changes, people get comfortable in their new jobs, they're going to say, hey guys, we're changing the way we're doing things at USCIS, DOL, Department of State, once you have new heads of those agencies. Now, regulatory changes. We're not talking about like getting rid of the H-4 EAD, which is provided for in regulations, and maybe changing the way they define specialty occupation or who qualifies for an H-1B visa. That has to be done with regulatory changes because these things are written regulations that would have to be changed in order to do that.
And that takes time.
That takes time. They had to publish them. Basically, your absolute minimum is 90 days to do that, and it takes government agencies a long time to regulate. We talked maybe about a year and a half ago about the Biden administration's new H-1B regulations. Where are they? They never showed up. They published proposed ones. They never showed up. The Trump administration tried to regulate at the end of their term. They ran out of time to do it. So there's basically regulatory changes can happen. You'll have pre-advanced notice of them because they will have to publish them first. Because if they don't publish them first, I guess there's exceptions to where you can do things on an emergency basis, but they will make themselves more subject to scrutiny, and that is something that shot them in the foot last time. Basically, regulating not the right way. Yeah. And lastly, I would say is changes in the law, and that's when everything really can get turned upside down. And we were sort of talking earlier. It's can you get them all to agree upon something really? You say they have a mandate. I'd say, yeah, they do, but they have trouble agreeing on things when it gets down to brass tacks.
You need 60% to pass legislation by agreement in Congress. That's the filibuster rule.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and McConnell will step down from his role as a leading representative of the Republican Party, the head one, said, I'm stepping down, but I want to tell everybody, filibuster is safe. That's the message he said, meaning that some of the Republicans who do not like Trump intend to protect the filibuster because the other option is to change by 51% majority vote, and that's called the nuclear option. And it's been used before a couple times, one by Republican, one by Democrats in the past when I looked it up.
Sam, I want to jump in for a second. You're saying, you're talking about the Republicans that don't like Trump anymore. I was reading articles saying there's not that many of those left. People have fallen in line, and I'm going to be same of.
But all what you need is one.
Is one, yeah.
Okay, because they have to. Well, the question is whether or not Trump is going to use the nuclear option. By forcing, or Congress has to decide whether they're going to use the nuclear option to pass law by 50% majority, which has been done only twice in the history of this country, in recent time, by the way. Or they're going to stick to the filibuster rule where we're going to get 60% majority to change the law, which you need some Democrats, which means it may not be as easy still to pass a change in legislation.
Well, that sounds like me from 10 minutes ago. Have we traded places?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
So I just want to explain.
That's how you know you have a good conversation when you end up on the other side.
Yeah, that's why we may not have change in the law, even though we have a Republican
well,
majority.
one of the things we talked about earlier, again, before we went live here was, do you get a comprehensive immigration reform package or do you get piecemeal little changes? And I think we sort of said it's got to be piecemeal because my version, or the one you sometimes agree with as well, is will they fall apart and not agree?
No way.
If there's so much in there, they won't be able to agree on it all, and that's when people will splinter off and they'll be infighting amongst themselves. But if it's things they can universally agree on, like I don't know, more money for deportation, they sense they can get those things passed. So we'll be optimistic on maybe they don't try to favor employment-based programs under the law.
The bottom line is this. I mean, the bottom line is this. Don't panic, I think.
Yeah.
And
Raise your hand if you survived the last administration. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And we were busy. We were busy during the last administration. We will be busy again because. I mean,
we were at our best. I mean, we're always trying our best, but you know, when you rise to a challenge, you rise to a challenge. You know?
Exactly, that's the point. And the point I want to make, Brian, for everybody listening to us, is if you and people are worried about my future, my career, you know, we were very busy during the last administration because. I mean, there's a lot of good lawyers out there. We like to consider ourselves as good lawyers as well. So if you're good at what you're doing, if you're doing information technology, if you are a doctor, if you're good at what you're doing, you can survive. The question is, you know, maybe the people who are marginal may be impacted because maybe your job is not strong and your skills are not strong. Well, it's survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
You know, but if you're good at what you're doing, so focus on doing a good job at your role, whatever organization you're in, whatever role you are in life, professionally, I think you can be just fine. I mean, that's really what I'd like to say.
Yeah. Well, Sam, I am. You know, you're optimistic, Sam. My final closing thought was, I just remembered one last thing that was on the agenda we didn't talk about, which has implications I hadn't thought about for our audience here, the legal employment-based folks, mostly. Birthright citizenship, talking about getting rid of that. So, I mean, raise your hand there, audience, if you've had a child born in the United States who's a United States citizen. And basically what you do with those kids, you take that birth certificate, apply for a passport, they're done. What are the immigration challenges relating to what are you going to do with those kids who are born in the United States? You have to get them immigration status. Do you become permanent residents like the children of diplomats? Do you have to file an H-4 application for your child that was just born? That's a huge one.
What about if you're a permanent resident? If you're a U.S. permanent resident, when your child is born, you become a green card holder?
I mean, these things, I mean, again, politicians like to talk, hey, we're going to get rid of birthright citizenship. But the implications of that, the amount of work they're going to create by, again, how do you deal with a child who's born to foreign national parents in the United States on temporary visas?
If they need a 60% vote, I don't think they're going to get a 60% vote on something like this. I mean, that's the challenge that we're going to have. So I personally do not believe there's going to be massive changes in the law. I think there's going to be some refugee changes. There's going to be some like deportation court, making things faster, because clearly we have a problem there.
Well, yeah, deportation, we don't do that, but it takes years to resolve one of those.
Yeah, when you get into a situation where reasonable people differ, I think these will stay. Like birthright citizenship, I think major changes is not going to happen that are negative, that are kind of doesn't make any sense. You know, and the bottom line for Trump is where the money is. Where's the money? Follow the money. He's not a guy who is very well thought on administration or American history or law. He's a guy, a kind of a pragmatist, right? Where's the money?
Yeah.
Where's the money? Where's the money for us?
Yeah.
You know, where's the money for America? Is the money for America bringing top talent? He's going to make it easy. If the money for America is to deport people, he'll make it easy. If there's money for America to not deport people, he's going to not deport people. Bottom line is follow the money. Yeah. That's really my thoughts. We don't know. That's our thoughts. Let's take some questions.
Yeah, so just remember, I hope and imagine we're going to get a wider variety of questions we don't normally get regarding political situations and that sort of thing. Just remember that when we answer your questions, we only get a little piece of your information, your life. The devil is in the details, so if you think you hear something here that's interesting to you, you think you'd like to know more about it, talk to an immigration attorney of your choosing. There are lots of them out there, and they're going to be busy for the next 4 years, but they'll still be happy to talk to you.
But I think a lot of people are going to be asking questions about, just like similar to that lady just sent me a text today. My husband is a U.S. citizen, has no criminal background. Should I still be worried about him?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming he's naturalized U.S. citizen, but that's pretty bad to feel that way because a president is elected. So that's a horrible thing, right? You know, he's not my favorite. I can tell you that. I'm not going to lie. But I respect the vote of the American people. You know. Let's take the first one. Brian.
So from Saif Khan, if a consulting project is coming to an end, then for how many days can an employer not run the payroll, taking into consideration the I-140 is processing and the I-45 will be applied soon?
Zero.
Zero. It sounds like this is somebody on an H-1B visa, I imagine, and H-1B visas, your employer is obligated to pay the LCA wage rate.
Yeah, you cannot not run payroll. This is not an option. I mean, I know a lot of employers do it, but it's not an option whether or not there's an I-140, whether or not there's an I-485. They must pay the offered wages per the LCA on a biweekly or monthly basis, not less frequent than monthly, by regulations for the foreign national.
It's in everybody's best interest to do so, because if the employer doesn't meet that requirement, they can get in trouble with the Department of Labor. For
Take a leave of absence and leave the country.
Yeah.
That's the only way.
Yeah.
And there has been one ruling, at least, which is, I think, to be discounted.
Balonius Maximus, I would agree with you on that one.
By one court says, no, you have to still pay him. But that's, I think, not the common.
Yeah, they're basically saying the wage and hour rules of the United States go outside the country.
Which is not possible.
The employer's answer is, if they don't have work available for you, they have to eventually make the hard choice to terminate employment, because they have that payment obligation. If you're not making money for the company, that's kind of what you have to do.
Yep.
Yeah. So follow up to the previous question from Saif. During the time an employer is not running the payroll, can an employee go on vacation? How long can the vacation be? So
taking off the I-140, I-485 layer to simplify for a second, you can leave the country for as long as you need. If you're outside the country, you can be on unpaid leave.
Yeah.
And then when you come back, then you get start payment. Now, obviously, if you go for an H-1B renewal, that can be a potential question that can be raised on whether or not the employer has a viable job for you. But there's no out of status for being outside the country and not being paid.
Well, you're speaking of outside the country. Vacation outside the country. There's a concept of the.
Did you say outside the country, or I just read into it?
I think you read it into it. Can employee go on vacation? How long can vacation be?
If you're vacation in the United States, it's not good.
Yeah, you are allowed to take unpaid leave of absences at your own discretion. If your employer is putting you on unpaid. So there's a lot of nitty-gritty details, but I guess I would say USCIS will be very skeptical of a long-term unpaid leave of absence in the United States.
And any unpaid leave of absence between jobs, by the way.
Yeah.
The Department of Labor
between like IT projects.
Between the discount, because they know that it's not your choice. But vacation in the U.S. is, you can take your allotted 1 or 2 weeks per policy, but you cannot have an extended vacation unless you leave the country.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. From one final question from Saif. Does USCIS take into consideration employees' W-2s for I-485 approval? How does it affect the annual salary does not match the prevailing wage or salary range? So for me, my simple answer in this one, it's a matter of if you're on an H-1B visa, it's on H-1B it's about H-1B compliance. If they find that you are not in valid immigration status through the time you filed your I-485, they can deny your I-485 because you don't meet that requirement and force you to do consular processing, for example.
So to clarify a point here, I think you went over it a little too quick. If you're paid lower than the LCA wage on your W-2, you could be found to be not in status. And if you're not in status, the I-485 cannot be approved. That's the connect between those three.
So, Ryan, I'm born E2 visa investor. Can I do another full-time job like medical residency?
I'm born E2 visa investor?
I'm sorry, UK, follow up. UK-born E2 visa investor, can they get another full-time job like a medical residency? So I'm presuming this person's a primary E2 visa applicant, and the answer to that is no.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
You cannot get employed now. Job like medical resident, no, you can't do that. You have to change status.
A little bit of context for everybody. E2 visas are really neat. One of my favorite types of visas allow people from many countries all around the world to come to the United States and start a business, provided your country has a treaty with the United States that allows for it. India is one that doesn't. Super cool type of visa, and basically they're about, I'm coming to the United States to run a business. I'm going to be the president, CEO, grand poobah of this business. And if you read your E2 visa application, it's going to say, you're coming to the United States to run that business, and really nothing else is going to be permitted.
Yep.
Sam, would you care to?
I changed job recently from H-1B to employment EAD, and I have not submitted a new supplement J with new employer. Can I travel outside the U.S. and come back on the U.S. with a valid advance parole? Is that fine? Absolutely, that's fine. It's not a problem at all. If you have a valid advance parole, you can certainly travel and come back. You're not required to submit supplement J per USCIS policy unless they issue an RFE or prior to your interview. And it's not a reason for you to be stopped or your advance parole remains valid without a question.
Yes. So, hi, Sam and Brian, let's say. Good evening. My situation is EB2 approved in 2014, downgraded in 2020 in EB3 and applied for I-45. Got an RFE on education similar to EB2 and approved earlier. Huh.
On the I-140.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I see. On the I-1. Okay. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So what's the question?
I was getting into it. There's a part 2 here. Similar RFE on EB3, an employer withdrew the EB3 I-140 as they don't want to argue with USCIS. Later USCIS revoked the EB2 I-140. I-45 denied also. Ooh.
Well, they cannot they cannot just simply revoke.
They would have issued a notice of intent to revoke and explain the reasons why.
Yeah, you have to be given an opportunity to explain their intent and overcome that intent. Yeah. So so there is something missing here in the information, unless the employer may have received it and didn't tell you. I don't know, or maybe USCIS made a mistake.
Yeah, if I have a theory about the reasons, if you get an education-related RFE, I'm going to say basically, whatever education you have never met the requirement for labor certification in the first place seems likely, and thereby, if they deny the EB3, they'd have to deny the EB2 from the past as well, is what seems logical.
Not without an intent to revoke?
Oh yeah, but they again, I would bet there was
notice of intent to revoke.
Intent to revoke.
Okay,
so
and
then, there's a part 3 that's changed employer and filed new I-140 in EB2. Old priority date applied to new I-140. I heard that before denying I-45, they have to issue an RFE. It didn't happen with my case. Can you please advise? So,
I find it difficult to believe that an RFE or a notice of intent to revoke was not issued.
Yeah, on the
I-140.
On the I-140, he's talking about the I-45 though. I heard that.
Well, but if the I-140 is denied, the I-45 automatically is denied.
Yeah.
Because the underlying, you don't need an RFE.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess, and I agree with you. From Subramaniam, basically, if your I-45 has to have a basis at all times, a path to immigration on which it rides, and that was your I-140. If you have no I-140s left, the I-45 must be denied, and they can do that as a matter of...
They don't even issue an RFE?
Exactly.
They don't. They should.
They could.
They should.
I think they should, but they can. They can deny. Can they deny a case without an RFE? Yes. It's rare, very rare, but
I mean, it's immaterial because, quite frankly, if your I-140s are denied,
if you don't have any other immigrant petition, they would know. They should be able to look you up.
Yeah.
If you don't have a family-based case or anything else out there, your I-45 is toast. Yeah.
I mean, my best guess that there was a notice of intent to revoke.
Yeah, and your employer, if you left the employer, they probably just didn't share it with you.
They didn't care to share because you left.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah.
Now, if it happened after 180 days, no impact. It's basically.
Yeah, but it's a USC. I would really have to. This falls in the category of devils in the details because I'm looking on it. They said the old priority date applied to the new I-140, and maybe we're sort of lost in translation as to what Subramaniam means about revocation. They could have just withdrawn the EB2 I-140, and that could be what is going on here. Because I'm concerned, like, if they actually revoked his EB2 approval for cause, should they be applying that priority date to the new subsequently filed?
Well, it's a situation where the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing.
Yeah.
But again, Brian's point is correct in that we hope that this is maybe a withdrawal of the I-140 improperly, either done before 180 days or improperly caused an I-45 denial. Yeah. So, yeah. It's the devil in the details, and you probably need a good lawyer to look at it for you to give you some direction. Yeah. Very important.
Yeah. So I'm going to defer to you, Sam.
Hello, I am from Jordan on EB3 visa. My priority date is March 2013. When do you expect my priority date to be current?
March 2023.
2023. Yeah. So the rest of the world, Brian.
Let's pull that visa bulletin up here.
Which is, I think, 20...
Forgive our craning necks as we have our monitors.
Yeah, 2022, I think, sometime. What's the date for filing, I guess, is the answer to that question.
Yeah, well, they don't have the December visa bulletin out yet, so let's check out the...
November?
Let me see. Yeah. Final action dates, employment-based preferences, EB3, Jordan, you're going to be in this category. The final action dates are November 2022, and
dates for filing?
Dates for filing are, drum roll, EB3, they're in March 1st of 2023. Oh, they're so close to you.
So technically speaking, we expect you to be there by the end of the fiscal year, early into the following year.
Yeah. All right. So let's see here. From Serene Haddad, I am here in the USA and have LC and I-140 approval in the EB3 unskilled workers waiting for my priority to be current. Is it possible that Trump will influence or cancel the operation?
Well, is it possible? Yes.
Yeah.
Not a priority. And that falls into what category, Brian, in terms of the changes? Is that a change in the law that requires Congress?
A change in law that requires Congress.
So that's a change in the law that requires Congress to be involved in. I agree with you. And that's the most difficult type of change that we are going to expect because it requires 60% majority of Congress. And it also requires some Democrats to be on board. With some Republican, and this is not the kind of thing that I anticipate that to happen.
Yeah, but I'll play the other guy on this one. If you have the EB3, the unskilled, the other workers category, if I had to pick one that say maybe that's one they would legislatively get rid of, that could be one, you know.
Without Congress?
Well, with Congress, but I mean, if
not legislative. Yeah, okay. I see what you mean.
I mean, it has the least experience requirements on it.
I disagree with you on that.
Yeah?
Let me tell you why I disagree. Because number one, it's only 10,000 green cards.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not
exactly a fast category. Yeah.
It's not a category that is impact anybody. It's a small category. Yeah. So for Congress to sit down and go through this and try, it could be lumped in with other stuff, which is not likely, honestly, but it is not something that's so big that gets people's attention in any way.
Yeah.
It's just not the kind of, I mean, they have bigger fish to fry than this one.
Well, yeah, again.
It's just in my judgment.
I mean, they're going to have 2 years to play with where they for sure control both houses, and I don't see it as the number one thing. They have to get through a lot of things before they want to get to that, I guess. I would agree with you there.
So I would put it on the low priority for that one. It's just my, we're applying judgment. We don't know.
Yeah, but I would agree. I wouldn't be terribly worried about that. I mean, in the rest of the world, other workers, the priority date is backlogged for about a little bit more than about 3.5 years, and. One interesting thing is we're talking about a Donald Trump administration that lasts 4 years, right? There are so many cases out there in the immigration pipeline that, it'll take a long time for them to shake out. I mean, you talked about brothers and sisters, but even a labor certification case, Sam, a perm case, a perm green card case, employment-based green card. I mean, how long does it take to process one of those right now?
Year and a half to 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, from the beginning, from beginning to end, getting it filed, even to processing with the Department of Labor, it's like 13, 14 months just in processing time right now. I mean, they have to make changes. They have to change the laws and wind down the programs. Massive changes are massively challenging.
And these are not priorities that he's talking about ever.
Yeah. So let's see here. I lost my mouse cursor. I totally lost. There it is. Next question from Ranyan.
Our AP pending on adjustment status. It has been 13 months. We called initially, mentioned that it was considered as re-entry permit. Will take longer. Can I reapply? So maybe it's not filed correctly.
Yeah.
And it could be filed, the wrong box is checked.
Well, yes. So let's elaborate on that further for the benefit of our audience. So advanced parole is one thing you can apply for on Form I-131. Another thing is a reentry permit, which is for permanent residents who want to come, who leave the United States longer than 2 years and not lose their permanent residence. And if you call USCIS, the people who you talk to are very nice, but they don't have much information. So they could be totally inaccurate about your case being a reentry permit case. But if your case was accidentally filed as a reentry permit,
You got to file a new one.
yeah, that's the sort of thing that you just don't
So you
know.
want to contact your attorney that filed it, and you want to look at the form. Or if you did it yourself, you need to look at the form and how did you make those boxes, how did you mark those boxes, and then based on that. Or we file another one regardless.
Yeah,
It's
I
been
mean, if
taking
you
forever.
were filed in the right time, meaning it's free to you to do. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, here's somebody we haven't seen for a while, sort of a frequent visitor, Sweet Seller. Will the new administration cause any issue to green card holders who received green card via employment? And there was asking for a friend, can the new administration close, well, actually, let's answer that first question first then. Will the new administration cause any issue to green card holders who receive green card via employment?
Well, we start always with answering any question, what is the law?
Yeah.
And then what is the likelihood that that law to change?
Yeah.
So the law says that the government, and it's really, there's multiple interpretations. You can question a green card filed based on fraudulent information up to 5 years.
Yep.
Also, there's another law that says if the green card issued in error, like where there's no visa available, the government can go back and take that green card for you through a process. Both of them requires a complicated process. So those are the scenarios in which, under the law, you will have to worry about your green card, or you may be surprised if there's a labor certification fraud that the employer was engaged in, or if the green card was issued by error. Now,
Within the last 5 years,
will Trump put that process under scrutiny? I wouldn't put it past him. But again, these are low-hanging fruit for him, are too easy, and he has bigger priorities.
Yeah, that in my mind sort of goes right in line with the, hey, let's try to take away people's citizenship if we thought it was got it. Those things are high investigative,
Costly with a very low return.
Yeah, exactly. Why not just deport the 1.5 million with deportation orders?
So that's easy to do. You can go with law enforcement, ICE, and get some intelligent information and arrest them.
It's so not easy. Where are you gonna?
Relatively compared to this is more expensive to do.
I don't know. I'll give you. If you have somebody who's a permanent resident, a happy permanent resident of the United States, who's out there with a documented job and who's living a high profile because they're a permanent resident, I think that person's. You got to figure out their fraud first. But you know what? Hunting down people who are living on the margins of society because they don't have lawful status is a nightmare.
Yeah, but here's what you have to know. In my opinion, at least, to find one person with a fraud in their labor certification, you probably have to go through about 1,000 cases.
Agreed. Yeah.
And then find that case, and then execute. That cost.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is massive.
Yeah.
Massive compared to the very high cost, but lower than finding somebody, arresting him, and sending him out. Both are high, but seems to be this is less likely.
I don't know, Sam. The idea of hunting down those with deportation orders, if the deportation order had much, imagine they get that deportation order, say cool, and throw it in a pile somewhere and say, I want to keep on going, living my life in the United States as I have been, and I'm done. And those people haven't been picked up yet because they would have been already, I don't know, finding those people. That's such a.
It's a large number.
Yeah.
So 1.5 million, if that's the real number, and that's what they're saying.
That's shooting fish in a metaphorical barrel. It's easy to pick somebody up.
So you're going to pick up 10%. The first 10% is going to be easy. The last percent is impossible.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be a point of diminishing returns until investment. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, for sure. You really summed it up. Diminishing, that is exactly how it works. There'll be one person out there who's dancing on the middle of the highway in front of the CBP office.
You may find somebody in the White House who they never knew he was undocumented.
Yeah.
There's so many people undocumented in this country. They speak perfect English. They came here as children. They're entrenched in the culture. You'll never find these people.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
If you sound as and that's the point I don't like. So they're going to go after people with accents
No, they're going after people who have orders of deportation that are identifiable and they're easy to pick. And then I think he's hoping that the rest will self-deport, getting scared. a percentage at least will self-deport,
Yeah.
meaning they leave on their own.
Yeah.
All right, so next one, Brian.
Sweet Sweller, asking for a friend, can the new administration close the consular processing and move green card numbers from family-based to employment-based the way it was done in 2021? So let's I'll challenge the narrative as to what was done in 2021. Basically, what happened in 2020, or really in 2020, the consulate shut down. And the consulates give away most of the family-based visas. And if those visas are not given away, they move over to the employment category in the next fiscal year. So that was a matter of the existing law that moved visas from the family category to the employment category. Agreed? So can they close the consular processing? I see, maybe Sweet Seller does understand that conceptually. Sam, what is your take on this? Because I'm clearly missing the mark.
No, you're not missing the mark, but I don't think he can close, but he can make it so slow and so inefficient, such as numbers will naturally flow to the employment immigration the following year. So may not be closed, but if they're approving 250,000 as they're required to approve every year, now he's approving 100,000 only a year.
But as you know, as soon as raise your hand if you sued the government for slowness at the consulate. Put your hand up, Sam Shihab, because you're in the same boat as me.
However, what we would have, what I would expect, because I've seen it before, is these lawsuits also become difficult to kind of resolve, and it'll be contentious suits all the way to the end. So the court system is easy to go to when there is a reasonable number of cases and an administration that's willing to accommodate. Now, if you have an administration that's not willing to accommodate, you may have to appeal the darn thing all the way up, and it becomes very costly. And that's what they do. They make it more costly. So I don't think. There's going to be a lot more lawsuits.
I don't know.
We welcome those cases.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
But again, we as lawyers, people ask me, about immigration law. How do you guys do? When Trump administration comes in, how do you guys do? And I tell people, I've been doing this for 3 decades, in immigration law, in the last 3 decades, and I expect it to be even more in the next 3 decades, which I will not be around, either good or very good. The practice of immigration law is always busy.
That's consistent. That's what you've told me.
And that's what I told you when you joined in, and you saw it now for a decade plus, decade and a half.
Yeah.
So we are going to, and another added to it is that we are good at what we do. And this is what I want to tell people, if you're good at what you do, you should be fine. We're good at what we do. It doesn't matter what president, what administration comes in, we will handle our business, we'll represent people, we'll give value to people and resolve people's problem. But it may end up being more expensive or more time consuming, and that's, the client becomes receiving a little bit more pain through the process because the process becomes more difficult. The bottom line is this: can the consular processing family immigration cause more green cards for employment immigration during the Trump administration? The answer is yes.
Yeah. I just don't think it's going to, at the scope we saw in 2021, unless we have a total repeat of the Donald Trump administration new pandemic,
I don't think it's going to be at the scale. But what the scale is, the USCIS squandered 60,000 green cards. It was
it's not exactly a great situation.
It was a wonderful situation, but who benefited?
Yeah.
A lot of people did not.
They gave away slightly more green cards than they might have in in a year. So.
All right,
again,
8 o'clock. Let's take one more here.
7.
7 o'clock.
That's just a thanks from Sweet Seller. So let's make this our last one here. We already took one from Subramaniam ready, but can we travel to India and get stamped in a January timeframe, or is there any travel ban on legal immigrants? Well, point from Sweet Seller. There's a lot of info going around out there, and there's no travel ban on legal immigrants. There's no Donald Trump administration yet. It doesn't begin until January. So
So yes, if you can get an appointment and get in by January, that's fantastic.
So shall we call it for the day?
Yep, we call it for the day. Thank you guys for listening to us. There will be more to talk about in the next Mondays at 6 o'clock Eastern Time, and we'll be here to bring to you the latest and greatest and what we learned about with this new administration coming in and answer your questions.